I'm Brian Bowman, the founder of foundrev.com, a performance-based growth partner for Shopify direct-to-consumer brands. And I want to share with you the framework that we use to help our clients scale. So when a client first comes to us, we guarantee that they will get at least a 20% increase in revenue in the first 90 days. So that means two things. One, we have to pick our clients very carefully, make sure we can actually get them results. And the second thing is we have to have a repeatable framework that we can follow, a system of plays that we can follow to consistently deliver results. And that's what I want to share with you today. Now, a few things to keep in mind. In that first 90 days, as you can imagine, we can't do everything, right? We have to figure out the 80-20. If you don't know what the 80-20 is, I'm sure you've heard of this concept, but if you haven't, 80-20 is the Pareto principle. It's the idea that 80% of your results comes from 20% of your efforts. So as much as possible, you want to try to identify things that get the biggest return, right? And this isn't just business. I mean, this works in learning a new skill, with developing relationships, right? Figure out the things that have the biggest return and do those first. It's not to say that you won't try to do the other things to close the gap between 80% of the returns and 100% of the result that you can get. But it would make sense that let's focus on the things we can do immediately to get the biggest jump in results, and then we can iterate and try to fine tune after that. Actually, a lot of times, what you'll find is a lot of the like really advanced things that you can do to grow your Shopify brand aren't really necessary to get huge results. If you just do the 80-20 and just get better at doing the 80-20, you'd be shocked at how long you can ride that for and continually see month over month and year over year growth. So again, as you can imagine, in those first 90 days, we sprint. We actually call it a 90-day revenue sprint. We sprint to get the 80-20 implemented. So what I want to do today is basically talk about the 80-20 of the 80-20, because I don't think anyone wants this to be 7 hours long of us going through every single detail, or maybe you do. If you do, let me know in the comments and maybe we can make that happen. But what I want to do today is just break down the most important of the most important so you can take action immediately and start to see results. And these frameworks do get results. We have a client right now. They joined us at the beginning of this month, and we're closing in on the first 30 days, and we will double their revenue from $35,000 a month to $70,000 a month, and we project that we'll hit $150,000 months within the first 90 days. So to be able to do this, there has to be a systematic process to follow, and that's what I want to share with you. So I'm going to draw some of this out. I think it's helpful to diagram this out to then break down each piece. So first, let's take a look at this funnel idea that I'm sure you've seen, but I want to break it down and probably explain it in a little bit different way than you're used to. So we've all seen this concept of a funnel that starts wide at the top and narrows down to the bottom. And at the bottom is the conversion event where someone pays you and buys your product. Now at the top of this funnel, it's usually called top of funnel. And then, at that stage, they don't know who your brand, they don't know about you, they don't know your brand, they don't know why you exist, what makes you different. They have never heard of you. So the top of funnel is bringing them into your world, right? It's this consideration phase. Then we move them into the middle of funnel. At this point, they understand what your product solves, what problems it addresses, and what makes the product unique from all the other options available to them in the market. And then we go to the bottom of the funnel where we're trying to get now people to take that last step and make a purchase and become buyers of the brand, right? And then what you'll see explained a lot, which I actually disagree with, and I think it's not just semantics. I think it actually really matters how we frame this in our mind so that our marketing is on point. What a lot of people will say is when they teach this concept, they'll say, okay, great, there was a conversion, and now what we want to do is we want to bring them back up to the top. Well, that to me is impossible because you're going back in time. You're trying to go back to a time when they didn't buy from you, they didn't trust you to give you over, their payment information to now get your product. They haven't experienced your product yet. It makes no sense that we would talk to these people in the same way as people who were originally just considering your product and and gauging whether or not yours was the right product for them. So the better way to think of this is to not think of it as just going up to the middle of the funnel. You want to think of this more accurately as this is the first part of this funnel, right? On top of this first purchase. And then there's this like iceberg below. And if you think of it kind of like that, where it's just this iceberg, where the mass of the iceberg is on the bottom, that's where all the money is. That's where all the profit is. So it would probably make sense to very accurately understand what that person is thinking so that we can communicate to them in the right way. And we're going to build systems around that because this is where all the money is made in your Shopify brand, okay? So what we really want to do is figure out what they need after that point and what are they thinking after that point, and then bring them back to a conversion step. But the way we communicate with them here is very different than the way we communicate with them before they made their first purchase. All right, so I want to break this out into 4 distinct phases. And I'm going to, again, I'm going to give you the kind of tease it a little bit. These are the 4 stages. And I'm going to give you the framework that we use. Now, again, this is going to be the 80-20 of the 80-20 because I want you to be able to implement this right away in your business. If we were going to do everything, again, this would be 7 hours long. So what I want to touch on is the most important pieces that you can implement today. And one thing that might be a little counterintuitive is if I were to say, all right, we have 90 days. If I were to say to you, we got 90 days and we need to increase your revenue by at least 20%. And in some cases, like the example with one of our clients right now, we will end up doubling their revenue twice. So we'll go from 35K a month to 150K a month in 90 days. If I was going to do that, what would you think is the first place we're going to have to really double down on? A lot of people would say we got to get more traffic, right? We have to get more traffic to the site. So let's crank up meta ads. Let's start buying media to bring people in. And that's actually the last thing that we do. So we actually start all the way down here after the first purchase. So we start all the way at the bottom of the funnel in the mass of that iceberg for 2 reasons. One, there's money sitting there that we want to take off the table and grab as soon as possible so we can start getting some results quickly. And 2, we want to do that because if we don't fix this, everything we do above that point, like above the surface of the water here in this iceberg analogy, is just going to be wasted money and wasted time. So we want to start there first. So the first thing, so getting even more granular, is before we start sending campaigns to our buyers and trying to get buyers to come back and be repeat buyers, we have to make sure that the vehicle isn't broken. The mechanism by which we deliver the information to our existing clients isn't broken. So the first thing we have to make sure is that deliverability is working. It's good. It's optimized. And this actually shocks me that no one talks about this. Everyone talks about flows and campaigns and segmentation and everything. And the first question should be, are we maximizing the people who actually see the emails that we're sending? I had a client who came to us and they had a 60% bounce rate on emails. Now, if you don't know, that's not good. That's bad. It's bad for lots of reasons. It's bad for your domain reputation and all kinds of nerdy technical stuff. And it also means that people just aren't getting your emails. So we need to clean that up first. So the first thing is making sure people even get the communication. And there's a whole process we go through. You can Google this, or there's plenty of education around this online. So just make sure your stuff's getting delivered. From there, then we move to the core flows. So before we start sending campaigns to anyone, we make sure that we plug the holes in the flows. So in Klaviyo, we use Klaviyo mainly, but every ESP out there has some form of like autoresponder where we can send messages based on a trigger event. So the first thing is making sure that you have your 6 core flows in place. Obviously making sure anyone who starts checkout gets communicated with so that they complete checkout, all of that, but make sure that's buttoned up and optimized kind of a first pass optimized it. We go into a lot of client accounts and a lot of students that we work with, we see their flows. And sure, they checked the box, but it's just basic templates. There isn't real communication. We're not addressing the reasons why someone abandoned checkout. You know, if someone got to the point where they were going to check out and then they didn't, sure, they could have been distracted. Could have been some food on the oven or whatever in the oven, but most likely there was some objection to purchase, and we have to address those things. Same thing with abandoned cart and browse abandonment. We want to meet the prospect where they're at, like enter the thought that's happening in their mind, so that we can get them to the next step and get them to cross the finish line. So those are the core flows. The next is we want to get really good list segmentation. Again, going back to this idea that we can't speak to people after purchase the way we would speak to somebody who didn't even buy yet and was still considering our brand. To get more granular, we want to speak to them relative to the product that they purchased, relative to the place that they're at in this customer journey. So if they're at step 1 and you have steps 2 and 3, well, then your communication to step 1 people to get them to buy what they need for step 2 should be very precise. And then if they've already gone to step 2, well, we need to get them to step 3. So segmenting out where they're at in their journey based on the products they've purchased. Sometimes it can be based on location. I mean, every brand has different granularity that they can capitalize on. But you definitely want to not just have buyers, non-buyers, and engaged. We want to go more granular than that so we can customize the messaging for everyone. From there, then we start considering and planning, communicating mass sort of messages to everyone. So our campaigns where we're broadcasting out. One of the first things we do is we use a concept called the 9-word email, or a tactic called the 9-word email that I learned years ago from Andre Chaperon. As an aside, one of my pet peeves with online gurus, influencers, people who are teaching is when they take a concept and make it their own when they know full well that they learned it from someone else. So I try as much as possible to credit those that I learned from along the almost 15 years now of doing this. And this concept is really simple, but very, very powerful. And it's called the 9-word email because it's roughly 9 words. And it's a simple email. It's a text-based email. And it just asks, are you still interested in help with whatever? Are you still interested in whatever you sell, achieving a result, ? And what this does is a few things. One, it gets them to respond, which is going to help our deliverability. Going back to point number 1, we want to maximize deliverability. So it's going to help us do that because they're going to reply. That's going to signal that, okay, people are engaging with this email. It's going to help your deliverability in the future. Another thing is you'd be shocked at how many sales you can get from this simple email because it gets people talking and raising their hand. And from there, you can actually start communicating with them and close deals. I don't think it's optional really for anyone, but if you have a high AOV brand or a high LTV, so if your purchase is high in that first purchase, your high AOV, $100, $200, you must do this. And or if you have high LTV, so your customers stay for a long time. So they might only make a $40 purchase, but when they buy that $40, they then continue to buy 10 more times, right? That's high LTV. You must do this because getting that one person in your ecosystem and buying is worth so much to you. And this works for even one-off small AOV purchases, but it's a must do if you have high AOV and or high LTV. And this is great for activating the list. It pushes some sales forward. We get revenue flowing and we start working towards that 20% increase at least in the first 90 days. Only then do we start considering doing a 4 and 7 day fast cash promo. Again, this is a term I see people literally using this term, fast cash, and not crediting who they learned this from. This is something I learned and probably most people learned from Frank Kern back in the day. It's an awesome framework, awesome strategy to just get sales going quickly. And there's a whole process for how we send the emails, but it's basically 4 days of promo and or 7 days of promo. But before we complete this step, okay, we have to move to stage 2. So stage 1, we've gone through all this: deliverability, core flows, list segmentation, and the 9-word email. And again, there's more that we do here, but 80-20 of the 80-20, okay? Because I don't want to overwhelm you, and I want you to be able to actually go and implement this stuff today. So before we kick off the 4 and 7 day fast cash promos, we have to go to stage 2, which is our CRO work, or conversion rate optimization. So as you can imagine, we're starting from the bottom, working our way up. Before we go and drive people to the site to go and buy more of what they've bought, or buy something that would be helpful for them, we want to make sure we're maximizing the conversion rate in the store. And this on its own is a 7-hour training of like conversion rate optimization, everything that goes into it. But I want to give you the key things that usually are the low-hanging fruit that give you the biggest bang for your buck that you can execute right away to drive up conversion rate. So the first thing is you have to know where you're starting from. So you must be tracking these metrics, right? So you want to know, what is your conversion rate, mobile versus desktop. You want to know what your average order value is. And you want to know not just your conversion rate, but your bottom of funnel throughput. And what does that mean? What that means is how many people, when there's a session, right? So you start with a session, and then you move to add to cart, then you move to initiate checkout, then you move to complete checkout, okay? We want to know not just that you have a 2% conversion rate, or a 1.5% or a 3.5% conversion rate, but what is the throughput? Because each one of these is a choke point that you may have to fix. And if you start to track that, you'll know that, okay, we have good add to cart and good initiate checkout, but then we have a drop off before they complete. Or we have good add to cart, but low initiate checkout, which ultimately results in low complete checkout. So the throughput choke point is after add to cart. This allows you to increase your conversion rate, but understand what the problem is, so you diagnose correctly and then address the thing that's actually killing conversions. And what we're hoping for when we do this, by the way, is that we drive more traffic, and as more traffic starts to come in, our throughput stays the same or gets better. Because many times what will happen is conversion rate will tank. So even though, if you have low traffic especially, even though conversion rate can look pretty good, when we start to drive conversions, which we'll get to in step 4, we want to monitor each one of these points so that throughput stays solid, and we get those people to make it all the way through to complete checkout. So those are some baseline metrics that you want to have as you're starting to go through this conversion rate optimization sort of first pass. So collect those, get a baseline, and then monitor those. Well, that was a mouthful. Monitor those each week. So that's actually what we do. Every week we have a Monday ritual where we pull all the stats for all of our clients, and we can then flag where the problems are, the red flags, yellow flags, green flags, so we know what to address and what problems are coming up in the horizon, and what things we can just leave alone for now because they're just not important. They're doing well, and we have to focus our resources on the red flags and the yellow flags. So every Monday you can go through that process. All right, so we want to, once we have this, we want to make sure that we're doing 2 things. One, fixing the visitor, so monitoring visitor behavior so that we can make easy fixes on the site. So this is done through screen recordings, heat maps. We want to understand, where are people dropping off? Where are they rage clicking? Where are the problems? So then we can diagnose the problem, come up with a strategy to solve it, and then fix that. Because again, if you're not fixing the obvious places where people are clicking and nothing is happening, that clicking, people bounce. If they're doing that, they bounce. So we have to fix all that stuff first. So we do that by tracking visitor behavior and then fixing those choke points. Now, in that fixing, the first thing we want to focus on are what we call the money pages. So the money pages are your homepage, your product description or detail pages, and your checkout. Okay. There's lots of pages you could fix. You have collections and blogs and all this stuff. I will tell you the three that you want to focus on: your homepage, your product detail page, and your checkout. Again, we could dive way into this on all the details of this, but high level 80/20 of 80/20 of 80/20. Your homepage, make sure you have a hero offer and point to that hero offer. We're going to talk about offer in a second here. You basically want, when people come to your site, you want to have the place where the newbies know, oh, I got to go there. And then your repeat buyers know, sweet, I got to go there. We have to point them in the right direction. If we just have just a bunch of random stuff there, or a bunch of things that look pretty but don't actually drive conversions, people will click around your site. I've seen tens of thousands of screen recordings at this point, so I can tell you from the actual, watching people's experience on websites, on Shopify stores, they will kind of get lost. They'll scroll and they'll bounce. They just, we need to tell them they're here, go here. You're here, go here. Now go here, now check out. So homepage, product detail pages, we have to make sure that we have social proof. We have a description of what they're getting, why they need this, who this is for, why they need it, and how to get it and how to use it. And of course, social proof with reviews. We want to optimize those product detail pages, and then checkout. This is one of the, people sleep on checkout all the time. And this is where we usually see the biggest drop off between initiate checkout and complete checkout, is non-optimized checkout pages. So spend some time optimizing those. Really basic things can make huge differences. So even making sure the design is consistent with the rest of the site. Can't tell you how many times we see a checkout page that looks completely detached from the whole user experience that they've had on the website, on the store. So it just feels like this is a totally different place. So everyone's like, I don't trust this signal, starts going off, and then they bounce. So make sure you're optimizing the checkout. All right. So you've done some CRO. Now you're ready to take your fast cash promo and start driving traffic. So what I would do is, once you've gone through all of step one, then and gone up to step two, then come back and do your 4 or 7 day fast cash promo to drive sales to existing customers and your existing list. This is where we're able to get a big jump in sales right away. Like first week, first 2 weeks, we see a spike in sales. All right. Next, we want to move up the funnel. And the reason why I say this comes next is your offer is something that anyone can buy, including your existing customers. But what's key about the offer is this is going to be your attraction mechanism to bring new people in. So once we've cleaned up the bottom of the iceberg, we've cleaned up down here. We've then also done some CRO, some basic CRO, to make sure we're not losing obvious visitors and no obvious gaps in our conversion. Well, then we want to have an attraction mechanism to now use to bring new people in. So we want to build an offer that's built for margin, built for high average order value, and built for conversion, so that we have as much money as possible to be able to go out and buy new buyers, right? Buy customers. Because whoever has, from Dan Kennedy, the OG, the original OG, whoever has the most money to acquire a customer wins. So we want to be able to have something built for margin with a lot of cash, not just a high price point, but built for margin where a lot of that is actual cash that we can then use to go buy customers through Meta or however we're going to go acquire them. And if you want to build a scalable business, then it's really important to understand that your offer, if you can self-liquidate on that offer, which means if you can go out and buy a customer and break even with that offer, you're winning. Because if you're doing everything else on the back end, that's where the money is actually going to be made, not revenue, where the profit's going to be made. Now, of course, there are many times, I mean, we have many stories I can tell you of driving profitable top of funnel conversions through a killer offer that people want, right? And that's possible, but it's not the only way to scale a brand. There are plenty of brands that scale with break-even front-end offers, or even loss leaders where they lose money, but they know they're going to make it up in the back end. Now, I never want to extend out break-even much more than 30 days because that many brands don't have the capital backing and investors to be able to do that. if you're listening to this, you are probably bootstrapped, and you know you're trying to build this up with your own capital and self fund it from the business. So to do that, we need to be able to recover the cash that we spent to acquire the customer quickly, so we can redeploy it to get more customers. So we want to build an offer that has high conversion rate, so demand. It's based on the customer pain points, their aspirations. It's something that will get them results quickly, so that they can start to experience your brand and what your product does for them, so that they're telling other people, leaving a review, and buying more products. Um, and we want to obviously have something that has high margin, so high AOV and high margin, again, for all the reasons I said, so we can actually go buy new customers. So, this right here, think of your offer as the attraction mechanism. And that's why once we have this in place, then we finally get to our meta ads, and in general we can say buying media, right? This is where we start to now drive all of that top of funnel traffic. And I can tell you that in my experience, all the brands that we've helped hundreds of brands at this point over the years. Brands we've taken from 5K a month to 600,000 months, 10K months to $1.2 million months. Meta ads and sometimes TikTok recently, but definitely our Facebook and Instagram ads are what just pour fuel on the fire. But first, we have to get the fire going and build a fire stable enough that when we start pouring that fuel on there, it's not just going to burn up. We need to be able to keep growing that fire. So before we ever get to this meta ads piece, we must build all of these other things so that it can sustain the growth. And when we do that, the growth happens very quickly. And I just threw my threw my Apple Pen. The growth happens very quickly, and it does because we have a solid foundation that we built like under this, in this mass of this iceberg and everything leading up. And then, of course, over time, we iterate and we improve step one. We improve the CRO. We improve the offer. Definitely, we iterate on offers all the time, especially businesses that are very seasonal or that we can introduce new offers for different times of the year. Um, there's a lot of ways to improve offers, and we're always testing to see what works best. And with meta ads, I'm sure you know at this point, it's about creative diversity. And it's not just about creative diversity, it's about messaging diversity. There are people who are at all different levels of awareness, states of awareness. Um, and we want to communicate with them at all these levels. So we're always refreshing creative, refreshing copy. So it's not about doing anything else. Sure, there are some new platforms that come out, new strategies, new tactics that we'll implement. But I can tell you from experience of doing this, of taking brands from 4 and 5 figures to 7 figure months, I can guarantee you it is doing this better. This framework that I gave you, it's doing this better. And that's hard to accept because it feels like, no, there must be something I'm missing. I'm missing out on a tactic that my competitor is using. And I can guarantee you 99% of the time that is not the case. There's just one piece of this that it's a red flag, that you're not doing your Monday ritual like I said we do, where we can identify where something is breaking and we can hone in and fix it. But if you can build that system, then you know, okay, we need to focus on email, or we need to focus on CRO, or our meta ads are starting to not convert the same, and we need to now refresh the creative or change our messaging, and iterate on this process. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. I'm losing my voice a little bit, so let me grab a quick drink of water. So I hope this was helpful. Again, we could spend a ton of time diving into all this. I mean, I could talk about this for probably 6, 7 hours and still not cover everything that we do in absolute detail. And again, if that's something I didn't think you'd be interested in that, but if you are, let me know, and maybe we could put together a long form training like that. But what I can tell you is if you can follow this framework, so this 80/20 of the 80/20, and implement, that's the key. You have to implement, right? This is all theory unless you implement. Start doing this today and then track your results. And I promise you, you will start to see a lift all of these metrics in revenue, in your conversion rate, in your AOV, in your meta ad performance. Um, but you just have to start here and then get better over time. So go implement. Hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. All right.